What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to go through a case study on how we reposition $600,000 of a client's assets into a fixed indexed annuity. So if you are a retiree or pre-retiree and you're trying to figure out is an annuity a good fit, growth annuities, there's all these different types of annuities. This is going to be a nice, simple, pretty clean-cut case study on how we just repositioned it, how we ran through some different options, used some software on the back end to choose the best annuities, and why did we do 600? Why not more? Why not less? And again, my name is Dan Trinati. I am the CEO and president of the Trinati Insurance Agency and 360 Financial Group. So let's get into it. And as you guys know, we always like to break down the situation. We'll go through the goals and then our recommendations and the next steps. In this situation, the client's 57. He's getting ready to retire here in just a couple years. He does have a wife and a little kid, about 4 years old. He already has $4,800 a month coming in through VA benefits. His Social Security income is estimated at $3,800 when she's about 62 and a half. And his total guaranteed income per month, he's looking at right at $8,600. And he only needs $7,000 per month to live. So that automatically, just right out of the gate, that negates the need for any type of income-based annuity, right? Income-based annuities, you guys know, it has extra fees. It is good for guaranteed income, but this client doesn't need any of that. There's literally zero reason to do something like that. So obviously, we're not going to do that. His current retirement assets, we have about $375 into a employer IRA, $575 in an employer Roth account, so Roth 401k, $175 in a regular IRA, and then $150,000 into a brokerage account for a total approximate of $1.3 million. And we're typically, when a client has something like this, so if you guys do have a bunch of different IRAs, Roths, we're usually going to use that over a brokerage account. The reason being, if we use the brokerage account to fund your annuity, you got to liquidate those funds before they go into the annuity. But when they're coming from an IRA or 401k, 457, any like pre-tax or qualified accounts, it's just a direct rollover. So I'm not changing the tax status of any of that. And the brokerage account is really good for flexibility, being able to access that money whenever, no penalties, nothing. Obviously, this guy's about 59 and a half, so there's not going to be a penalty anyway, but brokerage accounts are really, really powerful, especially for the step up in cost basis when you guys pass away or any of us pass away. The kids can inherit that brokerage account with a step up in cost basis. What that means is, like, let's say you passed along 150 when you're no longer here, they would inherit that 150 tax free. They would only pay taxes on the gains of that 150. And to go through more of this stuff, do make sure you consult with a tax professional on the backside. Anyway, this client's goal, he doesn't have an income problem. He needs growth, protection, and legacy. That's it. Boom, simple. And the biggest risk, as you guys know, as you follow along with us, is a sequence of returns risk. So obviously you can read some of the stuff I have here on the slide if you want to, but the biggest thing, again, about sequence of returns risk, you could have two retirees, retiree A and retiree B. This person over here is getting a 10% rate of return. This one's getting 8. Common sense would lead you to believe that this one's going to do better. That is not necessarily the case. The timing of the returns actually matters more than the actual returns when it comes to retirement. Let's just say you got $1 million in your portfolio and you need to take out 50K a year to live. If the market's tanked 20%, you're down to 800,000. You take out 50 Gs, you're down to 750. You just got rid of 25% of your portfolio in one single year, right? What happens if the markets don't do well again the next year? Or you could be down 40% of your portfolio in 2 to 3 years, and that is very, very dangerous. And that is where annuities play a massive role to make sure that when the markets are not doing well, you can take more out of the annuity. Let those markets recover. If you're taking a lot of money out of your market accounts when the markets aren't doing well, that's like buying a Lamborghini and taking it to a garage sale 2 days later and selling it at a big discount, right? It just doesn't make sense. And that's where the annuities come in to really help also with legacy value for a family and obviously for this guy, for his daughter. So as we always go through this with all of our clients, we always want to talk about the 4 main types of fixed indexed annuities. Why? Is because every single one of them is designed to solve a different problem. So just going through this, right? You have your growth annuity, you have your bonus annuity, which is pretty much a growth annuity just with a bonus up front. You have your income annuity. This is where you're going to trade your money for guaranteed income. And then you have a hybrid between a growth and an income. We'll talk about that one a little bit more in a second. But your growth annuity, the goal of that one is to maximize the safe amount of growth, right? The trade-off on that is there's no guaranteed income. But if you don't need the income, it's really not that big of a deal. But this is your typical annuity that people are going to look at. Whenever we do growth annuities, I don't like fees. I don't like riders. You just link it up to the S&P 500. Keep it very simple. Simple is better, especially inside of most retirement plans. Simple is better, but especially inside of annuities, simple is definitely better. Your bonus annuities. You guys probably see ads about this all the time where you say, hey, give us $1 million and we're going to give you a 17% bonus. You'll automatically have $1.17 million. That comes at a cost. There's no such thing as free lunch. For somebody that's just trying to immediately replace a bond type portfolio, could be decent. If you don't care as much about the long-term growth, just because you have more guarantees on it, but you have the immediate bonus, you have the growth, but it's typically going to have lower long-term growth than compared to a regular growth annuity. Your income annuity, the goal of this is to maximize guaranteed income. You're trading your assets for guaranteed income. Some people need that, some people don't. The downside of that is it's going to be lower growth, so you're kind of kissing goodbye. So if you transfer like $500K, you'll have guaranteed income for the rest of your life, but you're kind of kissing goodbye, kissing away goodbye, you guys understand me, to the growth side of it. And it's not that good for legacy, because typically when you're like upper 70s, low 80s, there's not going to be any money left in the account. You'll still get your guaranteed income, but there's just not going to be any money left in the account for legacy. And then you have your hybrid between a growth and an income. These typically don't have fees. There's going to be less growth overall, but it would be guaranteed income. It's literally right between like a growth annuity and an income annuity. If they had a baby, that's where your hybrid growth and income is going to come into play. But for this client, his goals are growth, protection, legacy. No income needed, simple. You're going a basic growth annuity, and it keeps it very, very simple. We took $600,000 into a no fee-based growth annuity, and we're linking it up to the S&P 500. So why 600,000? Why not less? Why not more? With this client, his age and assets, he could have done a little bit less, but he wants to make sure if shit hits the fan that he never has to worry again, literally ever again, a day in his life. And that's why we did 600,000, because even if the markets do not perform that well after inflation, the $600,000 is going to be perfect enough for him to always be comfortable the rest of his life. And that's to leave some $700,000 to invest in the markets, to take some risk. But if that doesn't do well, this 600,000 is repositioned with his current income. He's fine, right? He's literally never gonna have to worry again. I mean, we would not want to do more, especially at his age. And if you guys are ever on the fence about what to do, always start less. You can always go more and add more into annuity or start a new contract. It's harder to go backwards. So yeah, that's why we did 600,000 there. And the biggest thing here, and this is very big, this slide right here, choosing the best growth annuities. There's a ton of them out in the hundreds of growth annuities out in the markets. How do you know how to filter to the best ones? And just because someone shows you the best rates doesn't mean that's going to be the best long-term annuity for you. So we focus on 4 key factors: financial strength, growth potential, renewal rate history, and simplicity. You got to understand all 4 of those. So with financial strength, you got to work with a carrier that's at least A to A++ rated. I'm not a big fan of B companies, B++. They might show higher rates up front, but the problem with those is that they're typically making riskier investments on the back end, and if they don't pan out, your rates are going to get crushed on the back ends, year 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So easy enough on the financial strength. Growth potential, they have to have good S&P 500 caps, participation rates, and overall just good index options. If a company only has one good index, there's a company out there, they have a really good S&P participation rate. Index participation rate means what percentage of the gains are we going to see inside the S&P 500, but that's it. Their cap rate is not good, and their other methods are just not good. So just because that one index is really good doesn't mean that's where I would like to put your money. So it really just depends on the overall company. What are their indexes? And this right here, renewal rate history, is very, very important. This kind of goes back to financial strength. Companies that typically have really good financial strength also have good renewal rate history. Because a lot of the growth annuities, they work on what's called that point-to-point system, right? So how is the S&P 500 in June 2026 for this video to June of 2027? How did it do in that one point in time? Well, once that one point in time is over, the annuity companies can change those rates the next year. And there are different rates, like 5-year rates and 2-year rates, but you want to make sure that these companies have really good financial strength, so that way their renewal rate history is also very good. And the last thing, simplicity. It's got to be easy to understand. No fees, easy indexes. That's it. Keep it very, very simple. And that's where our happiest clients are. The simpler we keep it, the happier they typically end up being. So our process is very simple. Go over the client goals, and we do a software comparison. So all the stuff that we showed in the last screen, the best companies, we bring that up on Zoom for you guys. So as we're running through all the companies, you can see all the different companies. You can see like, hey, we're filtering by S&P 500 A-rated companies. What are the best companies currently on the market? And we can literally click and choose every single company so you guys can see firsthand, not just take our word for it, what companies are out there and what are they all offering. And then we obviously, find the best fit, make a recommendation. Simple. And we don't need to go over this, but what about the other money this guy has? Just because it's good for purposes of retirement planning, right? He's got another $700,000 that stays flexible. We might use it for Roth conversions, different investment opportunities, future planning, liquidity needs. There's no reason to overcomplicate it. And we typically never want to put more than 50, definitely not more than 60 to 70% inside of an annuity. Just really depends, what the overall goals are and how much money you're also needing in retirement. This was a very, very simple case study on just how to choose the best growth annuity. Obviously, we didn't go through the specific annuity companies, but it's just once we understand the concepts, the products become very simple. We really hope that you guys got some good information out of this. So if you want a second opinion, if you're shopping around different annuity contracts and you just want to see the software and to be able to just, again, shop around the whole open market, or if you're really new to this and just want a conversation about, how much should I look at potentially transferring, the pros, the cons, and more about that, just go to our website down here, 360financialgroup.com, fill out the form, and we'll be in touch. You guys have a good day.